Strength like no other. Strength like no other. Reaches to me.
Well, a pleasant good morning to you listeners and viewers, and welcome to the CCG Hour. I am smiling already. My guest has me smiling and all of that. Anyhow, let me calm down. It's really a great day, and I'm hoping that you are enjoying the day already. Of course, it's Friday, and some of you just glad just to make it to the end of the week. So that's a great thing. Today, however, I have someone with me that I've been trying to get for quite a while. So, and of course, she has me laughing a lot. She thinks she's not humorous, but she really is. Naeisha, good morning.
Good morning, Wendy. Good morning, viewers.
All right, great. So let me stop laugh. All right. Now, the thing is, now Naeisha is here as a member of the CCG. That's one of the reasons I'm laughing. I'm just so happy to have one of my colleagues here with me, because I tend to have so many other people on the CCG Hour that some of you who follow the program a lot might be like, okay, where are the CCG people? Well, I have them. Hello. It's just that you know how things get. The CCG is a body that has so many things going on. And I'm just so more than grateful when I actually have someone here with me. So Naeisha is here as a member of the CCG, but also as the legal counsel for the CCG. So of course, Naeisha, you'll tell us a little bit about what that means to the CCG, and then we are going to start to talk about what we are going to really deal with today. So let's deal with that first. As it relates to you being legal counsel for the CCG, what do you do? Because some people might be thinking, hey, the CCG have problems. I don't think so. So tell us a little bit about what that means.
Right. So first of all, I'm a lay member of the CCG, and so because of my profession, my job really, I'm a lawyer. So from time to time, the CCG reviews lots of documents. You'll be very surprised of the type of things that will come to us.
Right.
So for instance, this would be bills. Before a bill may be passed or in Parliament,
Right.
they will send it to different interest groups, different stakeholders.
Right.
And because the Conference of Churches represents such a large percentage of the population, it is in our interest to look at bills to ensure that we have a stake. We say and we ventilate our concerns.
Right.
Of course, a bill is a legal document. And so we would look at it and with a view to review legislation to be passed, and I as a legal person will give my expertise to the conference on whatever issues as I see them and the implications.
So that when we say yes as a conference, we're not just saying yes because we think it's a great idea or that we are politically aligned.
Right.
Yes, making
exactly.
Sure that
we want to make sure that all the T's are crossed. You know, sometimes there might be legalities. For instance, the Parliament may be interested in passing a bill, but it may conflict with the Constitution. I may pick this up as a legal, with my legal expertise. And so I may say, this is a great idea, but we may need these things put in place before we do this. You cannot put past this without the necessary amendment, for instance, and we know that it has its own challenge. Some of you viewers may remember when we had the constitutional reform initiative a few years ago. There were two initiatives actually, and I was the representative from the conference.
Yes, I remember that.
Spearheading interest was represented through me. Sometimes there might be a big issue like an impasse between a trade union or a major group. They may ask for an opinion, and you know the church would like to have people reconcile their differences and come to the table, mediate issues that are of concern to the public and all Grenadians as a whole. So sometimes there may be legal things that touch the impasse.
Right.
And so I will give my 2 pence, if I may, on it. So lots of things come to the conference which is illegal. So it's not necessarily getting out of trouble.
And you see, and why I raise that, because we have, and which of course is what we'll be going into today, we have so many myths that govern a lot of anything to do with the law in Grenada. You have people like that from the time, and I believe that it is maybe a cultural thing or just total lack of knowledge. You have people thinking, oh my God, once lawyer involved, I mean, you're reaching in the courthouse, or it's something bad, quote unquote, that is happening.
Yes.
So that is why I made the comment and asked for that explanation, because I really do believe people have a fear of the
They
legal
do.
system, and that, of course, we'll have to seriously debunk maybe a lot of that. So I can tell you from now, you'll be here once you can commit. I hope you can. That you will be here, because I really do believe that there are lots of things that, you know, that need to be addressed, simple things that can easily be addressed, and that people can have clarified instead of having to possibly go to a lawyer to do it, because even that, some people might just assume that for them to get clarity on any legal matter means that they have to go to a lawyer
Yes.
to get that.
And there are
then, of
costs
course, they think
associated with it.
that's the, well, we'll be talking about that too. And again, well, this one is a classic. Before we get into what we have to do today, that all lawyers does lie. Lawyers, see, I'll put it wrong already. Where did that come from,
Well,
Naeisha?
I'm not certain. What I could say to you is that people associate lawyers with criminal law practice.
Right.
And
That
people
too.
make an assumption, and maybe that's maybe part of the myth. People make an assumption that once somebody is accused of committing a
That
criminal
they
offense,
have
they're
done it.
already been found guilty. And they've eliminated due process of law, so to speak. The courthouse is non-existent. And so you're going to rubber stamp this matter. And if you don't rubber stamp this person who is the criminal, and
Without any trial
without
or
any
anything.
trial, and you as a lawyer now trying to assist them put forward defense and bring another side of the picture. You remember there's two sides of a story.
Oh, no, not in law.
So once you try to bring this other side of the story, they assume you're telling a lie on behalf of
On
this
behalf of the
person because the person
who-
did it.
Yes.
And so you start with assuming most lawyers or all lawyers are criminal
And
practitioners.
that is the thing too. So the criminal practitioner part, because of course there are different lawyers. I
Then-
mean, and we would assume that people know that.
People practice many different areas of law. I think when we were doing the undergrad, we may have done about 27 different areas of law.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
And-
I wonder if
and
we'll
people
get to what we have to do
specialize.
today.
People often go on to specialize in
Uh-huh.
a particular area. So people may do their masters and in law, and they will do one particular area. So for instance, somebody may do maritime law. People may do just trust. People may do banking law.
Okay, wait, Naeisha. You see, you're just calling all these fancy names there. You need to just at least mention, when you say maritime, what do you mean?
So maritime deals with
what?
law dealing with the sea. Anything
Right,
to do with the
anything to do
sea.
with the sea.
Marine, you know, law of the sea, really. When you're talking about trust, you're talking about principles where someone may hold something for somebody else.
Oh, okay.
So one person, what you would say, have the legal ownership of something, but it's for the benefit of somebody
Right,
else.
okay.
You know, for
Okay,
instance,
wow,
a
look, I have
mother.
a separate field for that.
A mother may hold property
Yes.
for their child because
Yes,
the child
yes.
is not the age to hold property in their
Of
name.
course.
So that principles
have
of
that.
trust and other things, like when you take a mortgage.
Right.
Most people would have taken a loan, and so the bank is the legal holder of the property.
Yes.
Because you would sign your document
over to them.
We'll talk about
and
some,
that again
some
is
of
a
that-
whole
that
story
thing.
all by itself. Naeisha, we wouldn't be finished this year.
And obviously, when they hold this property, you get it in exchange for money. But there's a trust principle involved because you expect once you pay back your money, you'll get
You'll
back,
get
your,
back your
your,
stuff.
your paperwork. So trust principles. And so
Wow.
a lot of them have a lot more details. Banking, you know, the banks, there's a lot of law in relation to banking.
Right.
And,
And
you
then, of
know,
course, you have corporate law, which has to do with
corporate law will tell you about companies, business is a business area.
Right.
Most people, there's a lot of Grenadians who involve in business, companies. And so you will tell you what your companies can do, how your company is set up. If your company is in trouble, how do you fold? You know,
Right.
and that
Okay.
is covered under liquidation or receivership based on what route you want to go.
Wow.
And there's a whole module when you study in corporate
Right.
law on this.
on just that.
So
Yeah,
sometimes the area may
and then, of
touch
course, you have
an
things to do with
iceberg.
employees and all of that, a whole
Employees.
different story again.
You know, you have employees issue. What are your rights as an employees? You have discrimination in employment, a whole other issue.
Yeah.
And it covers a whole. Then you have when somebody dies, what happens with what they owned? That's a
Right.
whole other area of law.
And-
That
and-
is
and
called
then of-
succession law.
And then now, oh no, let me not get into that. What I was about to ask you, I think that will bring us all the way down a road that let me behave. Because I'm so excited.
Excited.
already.
Well, for me, law is just as exciting. It's thrilling. I can't think of doing any other profession. Sometimes the stress could get at me, and sometimes I say, I'm going to quit this. This is so stressful. And the next day I get up, dust myself off, and I'm back into law. And when you get a nice, juicy case to read or research to do,
goodness,
or you help people. I think the part I'm always driven by helping my fellow man. And I think that is probably the natural instinct in me. And it's probably why I'm on this conference of churches and other groups, because I do a lot of charity work.
Yeah, I know that.
And so I'm always interested in helping human beings.
But
and
some
law
people
is
may not
just
see law as quote unquote helping, again, because of these misconceptions and mindsets that people already have. And people here, we're talking particularly, well, our culture here. And could it be that a lot of lawyers, I mean, we see lawyers within just the quote unquote the court system or in their law practice, and then you will hear people saying things like that too. Oh, these lawyers, them are their big house. You know, I'm deliberately raising these things, not just for the sake of talk, but as I said, we want to really begin to deal with some of the things that are at the heart of people's concept, because somebody might even be looking at you, oh please, what
I know, I know.
People have these kinds of concepts. What's up with that?
And it's amazing, because I have many colleagues and they're quite generous and charitable. They do different groups. They may have a football team in an area that they support. They may help children go to school. Sometimes they give donations. We offer free advice, and that's called pro bono. As a matter of fact, when the Law Association has its Law Week,
have a Law Week. When is that?
I believe it's in October of every year. I'm not too sure.
But I will make sure I follow up on that.
But one of the things we do, we provide service where we would go to a place and invite members of the public to come in, and we render free consultations. And we do this.
You're rendering free now.
We do it from morning, from 8 or 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And you would have several colleagues sitting at a desk waiting for members to come in. And people get the same quality advice they will get as if they were visiting your office and paying a consultation fee.
Right.
Some of them walk with their documents. We review them. We give them a preliminary opinion. Remember, a lot of the advice it has to take is its own course, because sometimes you need further research and so forth. And sometimes, what happens often is when something is intellectual property, it's difficult to place a value on it. But the fees for lawyers is regulated. So non-contentious work is regulated. The bar has its schedule of fees for non-contentious business. Maybe the criminal practice is not so well regulated in terms of the fees that people charge. But then again, what is the cost of your freedom? What is the cost of your property? Sometimes it's a question where something very very important is at stake, and it's your time. It takes for your research and for court work, because remember, court work is not just what is happening in court. The lawyer has to go behind the scene in the night, prepare the questions, prepare the cross-examinations. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scene. So when a lawyer charge a fee, it's usually for the expertise, the time involved, the importance to the client, a number of factors. And sometimes these factors are not tangible, things that you can touch. It is not like going to the store and buying a can of milk or a pound of flour, where there's a tangible thing. Yeah. It's intellectual property. So there is the value to it. And most lawyers tend to work themselves, to the bone. And so if you have a nice house that is your reward for your hard work, then why not enjoy? And I always say, and this is my Christian perspective, that God wants us to enjoy wealth and a good life, a good lifestyle. So there's nothing wrong with any person, whether lawyer, accountant, doctor, farmer, anybody,
teacher, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We all deserve comforts in life while we're on the earth.
Of course.
And we shouldn't only wait when we get to heaven.
I know, right? And then that's a whole different story there. But as I said, I'm raising these things because to me it's really good for us to, set it, because we don't want some of the misconceptions that people have to even block them from listening to what we are going to be discussing you along with this series. Because I know, especially what we are going to be looking at, again, people's misconceptions can just simply blank out what we are going to say. And we really want to address that early, very early in the game. So, my goodness, Naeisha, I'm telling you thanks all during the program because it's just exciting for me. So anyway, we will, of course, as we continue, be able to talk about, different areas of law, especially if it affects areas we may be dealing with. But I am particularly inspired, at least that is what inspired me to call you in the first place. I'm inspired by an incident that it's a little bit humorous, but, well, to me, but it really inspired me. It was an incident with a woman who they had some altercation, herself and some other members of the family. And she had what she thought was her land papers. Now, so she went, and of course the police and all got involved. Drama, well, you know what happens in Grenada when it comes to land. And of course she was making a whole to-do about her fact that she had her land papers. And when she pulled out the thing, what it was just a copy of the plan of the land. And of course, there wasn't much calming her down because she figured she have her land papers. Needless to say, of course, we know she didn't have anything, really any evidence or anything. The truth is that she didn't own the land. But she just, and she had it for a long time because the paper had been well preserved. It was all brown.
Yes, yes.
So that tells you just how long. Yeah, I mean, they could have brought it into wherever it is lab that checked to see just how long paper.
Carbon date it.
No, but because she really thought that when whoever it is died and gave her this paper, that they actually gave her her land papers.
Yes.
So today, I really would like us to begin. I don't know that we are going to finish today, but I would like us to begin to debunk some myths as it relates to land ownership, because I'm sure you would know much more than me. The amount of, I could only call it ensues in the courthouse, what seemed to be when I was growing up, seemed to be every Monday morning.
Yes.
When people reach, is always some confusion about land and who own it, and a lot of the times, most of who making the most noise to own nothing. So, if we could begin to talk about that, and maybe we can possibly start with what we call land papers. I don't know how you call it you must have a fancy term for it. Tell me. What is a fancy term for land papers?
So Wendy, I'm so happy that you've invited me to talk, and this is such an important topic, so topical, so live, so practical, and that's what I like. That's what I said. I like to help people, because the public may have the perception that lawyers don't help them until they're in a situation. So imagine you're that lady who have this document and you honestly believe you own your land. And it's land in Grenada is dear to people's heart. So they get very, very emotional. And the truth is, situations like that happen so often because people get so incensed, so emotional, they lose their sense of reasoning. And so they make a lot of confusion about land, because it's so dear to their heart. Land is a fixed or immovable property. You can't go with land.
Yeah.
And land really does not change in terms of size unless they have a massive landslide and half of your land went down to the river.
That's a whole story myself with that legally, but let's not go there because I never thought of that. But
right, but what people do is when they have their land drawn, the diagram drawn of their land, they believe this is in fact the title for the land, when it's not. It is just a drawing of the boundaries. And remember, I have to probably just mention this: a boundary is an imaginary line. There's no physical boundary; it's an imaginary line. So the demarcation of the boundary is something the surveyors will point out and draw it on your plan to tell you where it is, and they would put markers like a motel tree. You know about the motel tree. Nowadays they put these iron pots. They used to use wooden pots, but of course these rot over a period of time, and they would put a little plastic strip that they tie. It's either a bright color or orange or a bright pink fluorescent, so you know where they
Yes.
are. But a boundary is an imaginary line. And a plan, the idea of it is that, and that is my understanding of it, the older the plan, the more, there's something in law, when things are older, it tends to have more, I don't want to call it weight. But in other words, if someone has a plan from 1960 and a person has a newer plan, the demarcation of the boundary tends to be a lot more accurate with the older plan.
Right.
Simply
Okay.
in time. And even with time, you know, because
Because of
title
course
is going
with time,
down,
certain
things
will
may
have- yes,
happen.
yes.
For instance, you may have the physical structure of the land change because people may use a footpath. Eventually, they start to throw some materials
Trees may
and
have been
debris.
cut, certain
Eventually, they throw some gravel, and then you start to see part of the land is moved into a road. So the original plan may not have this road,
Of
and
course.
later on you have this road, which is not in fact a legal road, so to
Yes,
speak. It's
yes.
not an allowed road. It's not a public road. A part of the land that people traversed over a period of time, and they created this thing.
And of course, the person now who now supposedly owns the property or is to own the property now is saying, another set of people might be
Yes.
telling them, oh, well, the
The-
road there since
I know
own.
exactly,
And
but
of
you may
course,
be the older person in the village would know. No, this was
That
not
was
how
never the
it
case.
was.
Ah.
Then you have the topographical plan, which will show you the topography, the hills, the valleys, what's on the land. And sometimes when you go to a piece of land, you really can't tell the boundary. I mean, surveyors would kind of see the markings, and if you're in law and you've gone to enough survey being conducted, you kind of have a sense of where things are and what may possibly the outline of the land. So sometimes people get a little confused with the physical layout, what is a boundary, where it lies. And of course, they believe oftentimes once this plan is done, that is the
Yeah,
end of it. They have
think that's
title
it.
because the plan is usually said drawn for, and it will tell you a name. So they would believe whoever has this name on this plan,
so
it
that's the
belongs to
prob-
them.
So hold on. So let's just stay there a little while. So if I am interested in the piece of property behind the studio here, maybe we had talks, and maybe I had talks with the Catholic,
Right.
church and so forth, and we were discussing.
Yes.
And I just need a plan.
Yes.
I can get a plan for the land.
Right.
And of course, the plan will have my name on it.
So
because
that-
it's been drawn just
for
me.
you. So
But
the
clearly I
bishop
don't
may
own-
say when you commission your surveyor, and the surveyor, we must guide people, must be a licensed land surveyor.
Oh Lord, here we go
Because you
again.
cannot have a survey conducted and a licensed land surveyor is not present. Right? Right. And the
boy.
notice is to be served to everybody in boundary, and that must be 10 days before your conduct of your survey to make sure that it's legal. So people have noticed they could come with their own plan and say, this is my plan, this is where it is. So, and that helps you to get your boundaries right. Now, when your surveyor comes, the bishop may say, yes, I would like to partition this land to sell a piece for Miss
Wendy, yeah,
Rufin.
right.
And so the surveyor would put your name for Wendy, but that's not the
But
end
exactly,
of it.
that's not the end of-
Because
right.
title can only be transferred by a document you call a deed, deed of conveyance, right? So when people talk about a land paper,
Is the
this
deed.
is what it is. The land paper is your deed, and
Is that
it's
the same
very
as the land,
distinct.
as your title, when you say a title
Your
for the
title
land.
for your land. And I
Right.
want to just describe what it looks like for viewers.
Sure, it's a pity we
because
didn't have one, but
I-
that's
I-
okay. We'll have one for the
I-
next
We'll have
program.
one for the
Yes,
next
we
program. I'll bring some
definitely will.
blank paper and
Yes.
show you what it looks like. So usually the paper that is on is firm. It's firm to the touch, almost like a Bristol board, but not quite as hard. Right? And there are lines around it. It's the length and width of it is usually 8.5 by 14, right? Inches. And there would be some red lines all around the paper. The top borders and the side borders. Top, bottom, and side borders. So it's almost like if you're on the computer and you have a header and a footer.
Right.
And then margins. But the margins and the header and the footer would be in two red lines.
Okay.
Right? And it's all around.
And that's a standard-
And that's standard in Grenada. That's a paper that conveyancers would use to print the deed on.
Okay.
And usually, when they finished with the signing and so on, before it is recorded, they usually would put some ribbon to tie the documents in place. And usually these documents are around for such a long period of time. You want to secure them well.
Right.
People who have their deeds for 60 years and they
Oh, yes.
preserve
Oh,
it
yes.
very well, and that's why you
Oh,
find
yeah.
discoloration, because people safeguard it in envelopes in a Ziploc bag. So sometimes they have the plan and they believe that is the deed,
Like
and sometimes
my
they have
like
the
our
deed
friend.
and this is the deed.
Yeah, yeah.
But the common mistake that a lot of people make is they go through the phase of getting the plan or diagram drawn, which is only part of your deed. That has to be annexed to the deed that I'm speaking about on that paper with the red lines. And that document is what is signed. Your plan is also signed by whoever is what we call conveying the land to you, or in layman terms, selling land to you.
Right.
Right? There's a whole other topic on transferring of land.
Yeah,
but
we're not even going to rush to get there.
We're just talking about the document itself, and it's always done in duplicates. Right? So when it is recorded, there is another copy that doesn't have the red lines, but it's on firm paper as well, and that stays in the registry.
Right. So none stays at the lawyer.
So the deeds and land registry at the registry. So if you're doing a search in the registry to find out what papers are there, so if I'm trying to find out if the bishop owns the land in Monjaloo,
that is what
you will go and you search and you would see that this piece of land there, and you would get all the details, and a deed is a public document.
Right. So in the case, so let's just keep that example, same with me and the bishop. So if it is that the bishop loses his document, you said it's at the registry, but the point is he hasn't a clue where it is, any
so
he misplaced it or mislaid it or it's burnt or whatever, but the point is he doesn't have it. But I want the land still.
Right.
So can the first question is this: can he still go ahead and authorize the surveying of the land? Can that still be done?
Certainly that can be done, and like I said, there would be a copy in the registry. So all the bishop would have to do now is request a copy of his deed from the registry.
Okay.
And he will have proof of his title, even though he does not have his own original conveyance. And original conveyance, though, is a very important document, and it must really be safeguarded with all care, placed in a good place that you can find it when you need it. However, perhaps I might preempt with the next question, but my answer really in terms of preserving of your document, should you misplace or mislay or lose your document, or it's flooded, there's a flood, it's destroyed, fire, and it's a lot of people lost their documents during Ivan. What you can do, the lawyers will help you prepare that document, is a statutory declaration for lost title. And it's a document which is an oath, swearing that you once had your document, your original document, you kept it with all your important papers, and you misplaced it, you mislaid it, you can't find it. The lawyer will put very fancy words to say that you don't know where you put it, or you damaged.
So it wouldn't sound so bad.
So it wouldn't sound so bad. Lots of nice fancy words, but basically what they will be saying is that you no longer could find your document, and here is a copy of it that you got from the registry, that is a true and authentic copy of it that is attached. And that document, that statutory declaration for a lost title, will be recorded in the registry. And so you will have it in duplicates again. One will be kept there, and you would have your original statutory declaration, and we want to hope that you'll keep that one safe.
Well, of course, I mean, you can't be that unlucky.
Right. And of course, if you have to sell your land, no, you remember you don't have your original title. So you have to prove to Miss Ruffin here, Wendy, that the document is not mortgaged to the bank and the bank holding on my original document. I really and truly don't have it.
Oh my!
So there are lawyers will do a deed of indemnity to safeguard Wendy. So should this deed show up,
next thing
you have to hand it over to you.
Because what if it were a lie, really and truly?
It could be a lie, heaven forbid. And it could be that the person, the vendor, sold the land to somebody else, and that other person holds the original deed. And that is why it's so important, as I was saying, to see that original deed. And it has happened, and sometimes it happens genuinely out of error when people have many parcels of land and they really mistake which ones they sold over years, especially if you may be older and you have, you had like 10 lots of land in different places, and you've been selling land, and some of them have been partitioned, so you may have retained the original deed when you were partitioning, and you sold the last piece and you don't even remember. So it may happen by genuine human error, but sometimes it happens when
It is
people are
malicious,
dishonest, malicious, fraudulent. As a buyer, you have to be very careful of your transactions. They said buyer beware.
So-
fancy word, caveat emptor. Once you're getting into business,
Yes.
you have to be very careful with your dealings. Check your title. Make sure the vendor has that paper, that
original
title.
or that statutory declaration, or all of
Right.
that.
And if they don't have it in hand, make sure you get a search conducted at the registry to see if there were any transfers. Because somebody cannot sell what they don't own.
But
If
of
they
course.
sold it before, or if it's,
Kind-
if they have put
so
it
the
in the
registry
bank,
will see it if it's mortgaged as well.
the registry will see a copy
Ah.
of the mortgage, so they will know you have to include the bank or whatever financial institution, credit union, and so forth, if you want to sell it to somebody else.
So that's why
So-
the whole thing tends, this whole, purchasing of property can end up taking long.
Yes, because first of all, the searches need to be done in the old archives in the Deeds and Land Registry, and we all know that the archives are not the best condition, I must say, because they're very old documents. I have my tidbits on this because I know in the first world countries, the big countries, archives and documents of this vintage, their age, they're looked at. They're taken care of very well. You cannot just search like that. You have your gloves, you
And
have your this,
everybody
and
just
no
going
moisture
in.
from your face. You have to bury your face because you don't want the heat from your breath to go on these documents.
and then you
And things
close
are
the
so
book and then it get-
preserved.
oh my.
And over the years, the documents were compromised because people, the public, was searching. You had search clerks going every day. And so, now there's a lot more rules on how you search your documents. But certainly when I was a student, and my first search, because when you're doing law, they
you have
send
to do that as well.
to
Right.
all over the place. And I went to the registry to do a search, and I just went through the index with my hands as is, with moisture. Your hands can have
Of
little
course,
moisture
with
and
whatever, you
oils.
just drink a
That's how
Coke.
you get a fingerprint in the first place, because of the oils in your hand.
Yes, yes.
And so you look through this thing and you're leaving your fingerprints all over, and the next
over.
person comes. So the
My
archives
word.
have been compromised, the index have been compromised over a period of time. So sometimes you find a lot of trouble to get your search completed. The registry has moved.
Oh my.
And so sometimes it's a little difficult. So it does take some time, but it's worth it.
Right,
Because you
right,
don't
of
want to
course.
try to buy a piece of land in Monjelu from the bishop for $60,000.
But you don't call it money yet. Let's go on the higher end because we
I'm
know
just
the price
thinking,
of
is it
land.
church, and they may give you a good deal,
No, but I
because
want
you're
the whole
on the
property.
conference of churches. But property is
But
expensive.
yeah, property expensive, exactly.
You,
so
in
I
St.
don't want you to
George's,
make
you're
people
not
think that
getting
land's so
property
cheap.
for less than $100,000 for
Hello?
land.
And
And
in
if there
Monjelu?
is property,
No.
there is a piece of house or structure
Oh,
on
yes,
it,
oh,
it
yes.
goes up again. You're not paying. You're paying $500,000
Yep.
easily. $500,000 is
Easily.
an easy figure to call. So you don't want to invest in that sort of thing, and you haven't checked it just because of your negligence. And remember, I said earlier, your deed is a public document. The importance of it being registered in the registries for notice for the world to see. Okay?
Right. So
Right?
that's not your personal business, because Grenadians love their personal business.
No, it's
Your
all over.
land is
Anybody
not
could
your
search and
personal
find it.
business. Anybody.
Could
We want to
find it.
establish that.
Yes.
Hello, your land.
You don't need to
is
hide
not
your land
your
paper,
personal-
because somebody could go in the registry,
will
look
still
for your
find
name
it.
and find it, and know if you own
And they'll know
something.
if you really own it, because
So
you
when
know,
you
because
come
we
with the
have this
plan,
thing,
So when that lady came with the plan to make all the drama,
Yep.
somebody just needed to check her name in
Clearly,
the
actually, they
registry,
didn't
and
take
they will
her on.
see
Oh,
she is
gosh.
not the legal owner. And she herself could have checked and
But
realized
Putin, she
she's
didn't
not
know,
the
and that's
legal
the
owner.
problem. You but of course, because
It's an
remember,
assumption.
on the plan,
It says
her name
for-
is exactly,
for
so
this
she's
person.
assuming
Yes.
that my name is on the
So
paper.
it is, I would not say it's a two-part process, because you can convey a title, you can transfer title, from same example, from the bishop to you without doing a resurvey. You don't have to do a plan over. For
Right.
instance, if it's the entire lot, if it's a partition, definitely
That
you
you-
would
right,
you would
because
do
you
a-
have to-
a-
yes,
a-
section off.
But if he's selling the entire lot of land, he can depend on the plan that was drawn in
original-
1900, because we know the Catholic Church owns some land from way
way
back. Antiquity. So they could use the same
Right.
plan, and you don't have to, you're just referring to the parent deed. What they call the parent deed is a deed that the church will have,
right.
and that deed would refer to the
And
description
then you just go
of
ahead
the
with
land.
your lawyer.
And sometimes they have it in the title, and they say a lot, all that lot, piece or parcel of land, very fancy language, measuring, they tell you situate at this place. They don't even say situated, they say situate.
I know, right?
There's no full stop, no comma, no punctuation, it's one sentence. A deed is
very
one
long.
sentence from this indenture, ending with the
goodness.
signatures at the end. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 pages long, no punctuation.
Is that deliberate?
It's deliberate. It's a cake. We use legalese. I remember when I was a student in Trinidad, one of my colleagues, older colleague who had another profession and was doing law as his second profession. And he was laughing because we had this course about legal writing, but they were teaching us modern drafting skills. And he said, are we likely to use any of these? We are replacing the legalese and we were putting modern language with it. And he said, are we going to use this? Why are you teaching us this? So the lawyers tend to speak a certain way because every day you're reading this kind of language and it becomes part of you. And if you're not very practical, you could find yourself talking to lay people, writing all the time, speaking all the time in the legalese. So it's very important to have normal lay people understand what the terms mean, how the things affect them. Because land affects everybody.
Exactly.
You know, you think this is your boundary. Somebody plans something close to the boundary is coming over you. You get very aggrieved, very upset. You run to the police station. The truth about it is that it's a civil matter. It's not a matter that the police can really intervene because that is not a jurisdiction.
That's another thing again. So people will say things like that. I call the police and they don't come. They don't bother with me.
Because the police is busy trying to deal with criminal matters.
Right.
And they do not. And other matters, road traffic and other things that they
Which are
regulate.
under their...
Yes.
Right.
Now, if there is a confusion and people start pulling cutlass,
well,
know
the
police because it becomes a criminal, there's a criminal element. But I always say, why make a civil matter turn into a criminal matter? And that's my practical advice.
But maybe people don't know that there is a difference between a civil and a criminal matter.
Well, I think people know when they're crossing the line of criminal. I think once you pull a cutlass, and that's a favorite instrument in Grenada, it's very horrible that people always pull.
So you have the cutlass with you.
So exactly, and they're quick to do that. And I think once you know you pull your cutlass, something is not right about that situation. And the truth is, it's very important to change the perspective people have about lawyers, but I think only lawyers can do that for themselves because sometimes it's unwarranted, but sometimes it is.
In some cases.
Sometimes it is. And sometimes you may have a bad apple that may spoil the entire lot and create this sort of impression of who we are. But I can tell you many of my colleagues are very generous with their time, their effort, their skill. And so it is very important for Grenadians to understand land, understand how the title is arrived at, how it is commenced, how you begin with a title, and how it moves.
Okay, so let's go back to, but not really back, but we're going forward, but using the same case, because I'm thinking that scenario there with Bishop and myself, that's great. So now that, let's just say we're going to continue to use the parent, what you call it, the parent deed.
Right.
I think I have it right.
The parent deed.
I'm keeping the words all
or
nice.
Principal indenture. I call it parent deed, but when I'm writing, I will use the phrase principal indenture.
So you see what's going along well.
Let's call it parent deed.
I know you're giving me more work to try to remember.
I'm calling it parent because you know you talk about a parent and a child, so you're commencing with the parent and the child.
I like it.
So I'm using the word so you can appeal to people's sensibilities.
Yes.
But also letting you know definitely that's your principal indenture.
Right.
And an indenture is another word for your deed or your title papers.
Your principal papers.
your principal indenture, right, is what is the deed that starts your title, that starts everything. So your original owner has a principal deed.
But okay, no, I wouldn't ask that. I was because the real owner, that might be
the real owner is the crown. Let me try to explain land as best as I could. What people own in land is an interest in land. Okay. Remember earlier I mentioned something about trust.
And your money pay.
So I would explain a little bit.
Okay then.
So you started with the crown owns of everything. And land consists, let me say, first of all, I must tell people what land is. Because there's land, to start with what land is a whole mystery in itself. Land is not just the surface of the ground or the earth that you walk on, but it also consists of the air above the land and what is beneath the land. So it includes minerals, oil, so find crude oil, if you find diamonds and stuff in the earth.
One piece. Okay.
And it includes the airspace. So if a kite is over your house, that's land. If a plane is passing land. But what happens in reality is the crown owns the land.
And the crown, you mean here the government or the
government, state? The state. And we will own different interests in the land. And that is why sometimes land would revert back to the crown if there is no person to hold the interest. And I'll give you an example. So when you're buying a piece of land from government, right? So let's say you're buying some crown lands. The Governor General will sign on behalf of the state as the head of state and will sell that land to you. But there is always a reservation. So there's a covenant which restricts you, which says that if there's any mineral or other deposits and so forth,
you think people read that in Naeisha?
It goes to the state, right? No, you are owning what you call a fee simple interest. Fee simple interest is the most absolute form of ownership a person can have. You don't get more than that.
Right.
And when you have a fee simple interest in possession of land, you could buy, sell, otherwise dispose of the land, part with the land. You could give it as a gift to your sibling, your friend, your children,
whoever,
the church. You understand? You could dispose of it while you're alive. And when you die, it passes on to whoever survives you.
Right.
Now, the reason I said the crown ultimately own the land, and that is my take on it, my legal opinion on it, is that when you have the land being divided after someone dies, it goes down to all the different classes of persons in the case that the person dies without having made a will. Right? And when it reaches to the last class, if there's no one who fits that class, it reverts back to the crown.
And that happens to people's money in the bank too?
Well, yes.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, before we go there, wait, Naeisha, let's take a break. Whew, I need water as well as you filling me up. I'm enjoying it so much, but we've been chatting quite a while. I didn't even look at the time. Let's take a break. And we're going right back into dealing with the land, and let's finish up with that crown, because I'm wondering, the one question I want you to answer as soon as you come back is this. See that you said the crown ultimately owns it. See that I paid my money. Because that's what people would say. Well, I pay my money, so what do you mean? Right. So I want you to think about that. Let's take a quick break and we will be right back.
Live as one in God's plan.
Let's live together and understand that we are one in every land, with faith and love and the spirit up above. Let's listen and share and show the world we care. Let's walk together, hand in hand. Caminare insieme.
welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. My goodness, I never thought I would have been this interested in law and all of that, but Naeisha, you're making it so great. I told you I'll be telling you thank you throughout the whole program. Thank you again. All right, great. So we're going back to the question that we had before the break, which is based on what you were saying with the whole fact that ultimately the Crown owned the land, the fact that we've paid for it. So as a landowner, I figure I've paid for the land. So all like what you mentioned with the fact that both, the air and the mineral. So if I discover, because maybe I bought my piece of land and I'm, digging and whatever, and I find, I wouldn't say God forbid, bless the Lord, gold or some mineral, something valuable. You're telling me that's not mine?
No, the states can.
But
the states,
I paid for it.
and that's the thing about it. So what you're owning is a freehold interest, the most absolute form of ownership. But remember, and this is probably historical. This probably stemmed from the history. Remember, we have gotten our laws from England,
Yes.
and England would have had the feudal system, the feudal laws. So while some of the things are abolished, there's still some elements of things that have gotten their way presently in the land law, and our conveyancing laws are very, very old, very old. So you would own this freehold interest, but at the end of the day, if there is anything that's precious minerals, oil, so forth, it would, the Crown would have entitlement to it, and it's for them now to say yes, we want to,
whatever.
right? Because these restrictions or covenants would run with land. So whoever was the original person who got the land from the Crown in the first deed, the beginning of the beginning. Because remember, people would have been conquering during the common. It would have originally belonged to the state. So they would have had a restriction, a reservation that runs with the land, and you may never see it in your deed, but you may go back to your parent deed, the beginning of the beginning. And there the restriction may be found. But, so the end of the day, what you own is this interest. So what you're paying for is this freehold interest in the land. And it doesn't happen. I don't know many instances where it happens.
Well,
but
I would like it happened to me, but
yes. And then you have people transferring title by way of leases. So if you have a leasehold interest, that's another interest in land. And in first world countries, people use their leases to get funding, to get loans and so forth. They can use it.
They don't own the
land. Well, the ownership is a leasehold interest.
Right.
So the first interest I spoke about was a freehold
which
interest.
is what we call your own the land.
That's when you have your title deed.
Right.
Then you have the leasehold interest, and when you have your lease drawn up, it can be recorded in the registry.
Okay.
Yes, you have a so you prove, and you have 99-year leases. The
Yes,
topic
we
became
have these
very
things.
topical
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you have an interest. You can do many things if you have a leasehold interest, including build on the property, on the land. You could do many things as you have this land. This is 3 generations.
Yes,
So
of course.
it's pretty much a sound title, so to speak, but it is not the freehold interest. So you see there are different forms of interest in the land, and you could sublease. You understand? So there are different ways of owning land.
Right.
Okay? You have your freehold that you're entitled to. You have your leasehold. And then you have the different times when it's transferred to different holders of property. Right? And of course, the topic of the leasehold is a whole topic. It is a whole area of law, landlord and tenant, because oftentimes people may have a lease and the landlords may be very intrusive, but you have a right to quiet enjoyment to enjoy that property. And also you have rights and obligations. So while your landowner will have to pay your taxes, you will have to maintain the property in a good condition.
Right.
You understand?
Yes,
So there are obligations and there are responsibilities, but there are also rights. Your landlord can't just come downstairs and check to see whether the place is in good condition at any time. They must give you notice.
Exactly.
They can't just go and open your fridge and behave like the place is theirs and sit on your furniture. And they cannot tell you who your guests should be. Once there's no illegal activity being done on your property, they cannot really tell you that. So it's a very good interest in land, but sometimes people don't even see it as an interest in land.
And that's the thing.
And oftentimes they don't do a lease.
They don't. That's the
they
other
just
thing
have
as
a
well.
word of mouth or 2-line letter document, and it's not really a lease. You know, people may be renting a piece of property for 8-9 years, and it's not recorded in the registry, and it really should be.
Okay, so that, as you mentioned that, it brings me to squatting.
Right.
Oh boy. Well, oh
Wow,
goodness.
that's a...
Whew. All right. Should we even touch that? I mean,
that is a long
I can
discussion.
So here, what? Let me take note of it for real, because I do believe, because it's very important, because I'm not just squatting as in with the issue with government land and so, but even the context within the context of someone is just there on piece of land, and as you mentioned, you see, you started it by saying it.
Yes,
but people are there on this land for however long, and then out of the blue, somebody, and of course it's real owners, but they come back from I don't know how much ever years after, and then you have a lot of confusion and contention in that regard. So I'll take note of it, because I do believe it is a very very topical thing. Yes.
I wanted to just go back on something about the comment I made earlier. I don't want to have persons misunderstand the comment I made about government. Let's look at an example of when you forfeit something. You can only forfeit something that you have an interest in. Let's start with that point, right? The bank can only forfeit land through forfeiture proceedings if you have a mortgage and therefore you've conveyed your title to them to get money from them.
So
you have
like
a legal
exchange.
mortgage as an exchange.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm saying that is, if you have taxes owing, for instance, government can forfeit for non-payment of your taxes. You may have interest and penalties that are sky high, and they can forfeit. And I'm saying that if you do not have a right to start with, how can you forfeit?
Right.
And then you have all these other rights that come. Like I said, the airspace and all of these things. So it begs that question. Like I said, no government, no reasonable government is going to go around taking back people's land when you have a free state, right?
So we don't have that challenge.
So this does not happen. And the way things are, nobody's finding any precious metals and stuff in Grenada. And you know there was some survey done and we found some oil.
But in the
I would
case
like
that
it to be in my property.
I know, right? But that's the thing there. I mean, we're teasing about it, but in the case that something, you know, of that kind of value is found, then the person, of course, is compensated more than just maybe the cost of the
compensated.
land.
You are definitely compensated for the government having taken your land. But like I said, interest is what you have in is an interest.
Right.
So government does not take anybody's land without reasonable compensation made pursuant to the Constitution.
Right.
But we are saying that they do have rights to certain things that are beneath your land and the airspace, because you have planes flying over your land all the time, and nobody makes a fuss about it, and nobody even sees it as part of land. But the legal definition of land, it does include the airspace, and we see government having rights to have crafts fly over your land at all times. So I'm making this statement very cautiously, because it's not to say that when you pay your money, you pay your money and you're free and an absolute way to use your land for your use and your benefit, to do with it as you please, to sell, to mortgage, to otherwise dispose of it. Okay?
Okay.
Plant whatever you want to plant. Practice animal husbandry, you name it.
And of course, that whole context there, it's written, so it's something. Of course, we too many of us don't like to read.
It will be in your deed.
It's there.
It will be in your deed. If you bought land from the Crown, it will be governed by the Crown Lands Act. But if you buy from a private person, the deed would say what are your do's and don'ts. If there are any restrictions to the land, they will be there on your deed, and they will call those reservations. They're covenants, and they're reservations.
And that happens a lot with residential.
Residential will definitely have lots of covenants. So, for instance, they may tell you cannot put a chain link fence, or you cannot have goat and sheep on the land, or you cannot have a water tank showing,
that is too high,
or your fence
like
might be 2 feet or more. It might be, they may even tell you what materials you can use. So, for instance, they may tell you can't build a house in wood, or you can use a fence in galvanized, or different things that they may have restrictions, because they want to preserve the integrity of all the properties, so that the value of the property is kept at a good standard.
But the thing I don't, and I understand that, fine, they're giving you that upfront.
They're giving
because
you
if you agreed, you are the
that
one.
And it runs with the land, which is a very popular term lawyers would use, and persons do not understand that. When they put these covenants in, every person who buys the land, even if they don't write it on your deed, it's on that parent deed, and it affects you. So you cannot now say, I put in a cow to graze in the yard, because you bought it from X, and I don't see it on my deed, because X bought it from an original person,
and that is why exactly I raised that. But I'm wondering though, and maybe people might be wondering that as well. you bought, you know, your space, your plot of land from, you know, this estate that is doing this development or whatever. Now, but the thing is that so let's just say it has come to the point where every lot of land has been sold. So it's 20 lots of land in that little developmental place. All the lots are sold. How does it come now? Because nobody's buying any land technically anymore.
Right.
This now, it's all sold. There are no more lands being sold in that area. That's it. So does the estate or the whoever is selling, what rights do they have then? Or do they have any at all?
No.
What happens
Once
then?
you've parted with your land by a deed, it extinguishes all your rights that you have with your land.
But then while they're still selling, that is when these covenants and so forth will be
The
in
covenants
effect.
will be in effect. The covenants will still govern the land and so forth. The covenants will tell you what you can do and what you cannot do.
That's if you still purchase, you know what I mean? That is if it's still are available.
Even after the lands are finished sold, the covenants exist as among the different persons, because you do not want to buy a piece of
Oh, so
land.
that is what I
where,
want to get clear.
So Wendy and I are next door neighbors, right? We bought for a piece. Bishop is selling out lots of lands, and we have divided in lots, and we are in this they are in boundaries, and we are governed by this. And then the last lot of land is sold out.
Sold, right? And the people.
Wendy
they've
would not
gone.
like to see me go and get 3 black belly sheep and put in my yard grazing, because when we were buying
Well,
this
not
land,
just grazing, it's coming over by me too.
it's coming over and eating your nice
My
fancy
Geronia, all my fancy little orchids
flowers.
or whatever.
Lovely. So we
Yes.
don't want that. So I am still restricted by this covenant, even though I signed it with the original developer or the bishop, right? So the covenant, it runs with the land to bind me over in perpetuity forever. It goes on.
You
So
think
when
people
I
know these
sell
things,
this
Naeisha?
piece of land, for instance, to someone else, that covenant is running. So
Goes
that
along
person
with
can
it.
go and put a leaf sheep and cause you, because you now can sue. You can sue them, and you can sue the developer actually, because
Even
the
if
land
the developer
is,
sold out all the property and they're no
yes,
longer
because
around.
now they have to enforce the covenants against whoever because it's running with the land. It does not stop running with the land.
Because they
And sometimes people say, but can I? If you have to go back to renegotiate. And it's impossible to do it because remember,
because now
the
you're
other
negotiating
people
with
would have bought the
everybody
land
else. Oh my
knowing
God.
this was a restriction. And let us make this assumption. Would you have bought the land if you thought
True.
4 generations
Down the
this
road, you'll
person
have
would
black
have
belly
the sheep
sheep
in your
yeah.
area? You understand? So it's not really fair, it's not really just, it's not really
Wow.
equitable. And I always believe the law is fair and it's just and it's equitable. And it's just a question of digging a little deeper to find the answer. Sometimes the answer may seem that you cannot find it, it's elusive, but then you look, you read, you find a case, you find something, and you get the gap, you get the window that you can use. So
Wow.
when you're selling property, you have to look at that as well. Fine. That is why it's important to do research, to know if there were any restrictions before this person was selling to you, because their deed may
my
not have the
word.
restrictions, and it may be there a few deeds back. So when we are searching, we search 60 years back. So we
Wow.
look for what we call
Okay.
a root of title, a very important word phrase. A root of title, the root of the problem, the root of title. And what we see when we look at the root 60 years in Grenada, we see how the title moved from one person to the other. We look for if there's any defect in title. Maybe somebody was supposed to sign, they didn't.
Oh my.
And we look for all different things that may happen with the title and who actually has it now, and whether that person who has it has a right. The person who's telling you, the person who's in physical ownership, not legal ownership, person who's physical ownership has a right to sell it to you.
Right.
Because the physical person
was just
on the
about to
land
ask
who's
that
in the
could say,
house,
yes, I'm in the house.
and they may say, I'm paying the taxes, look, I'm paying the taxes, and look, and they may pull out a plan.
Oh,
But
yeah,
somebody
the
else
plan
had the
again.
deed, they may pull out a plan because 10 years before they had a plan done, and it says for this person, because the
Yes,
surveyor
of
saw
course.
them. And sometimes the surveyor, because Grenada has an unregistered system of conveyancing, all the deeds, all the title is not recorded, registered, people have been living until generations. So sometimes the surveyors are very used to, you cannot blame the surveyor or
I
because
understand.
surveyors are used to going out to survey land, and the person cannot prove their ownership with the title deed. So they will
And
do
they-
the
and
survey
of course
for
they're
you
expecting
and
that
write
to
it
be done
for
in the
you.
search.
And they will
Yeah.
expect the lawyers to do
To do their work. Right.
the title. And also Inland Revenue, So sorry, when they're coming in to do the investigation about what is happening here and value your property so you could pay inland taxes, inland revenue, the taxes at inland revenue, they're not too concerned. Maybe I might be misspeaking and putting my foot in my mouth, but they're more interested, let me put it this way, they are more interested than not in the government coffers getting filled. They would
Which
like
is their job.
they
Yeah,
would
to
like
get the
taxes
taxes
being
in.
paid for
Yeah,
this lot
yeah.
of land. Because this lot of land is registered to pay taxes. They're not too concerned with who is paying the tax
Who's
for
actually
the
doing the
person.
pay,
And if
yeah.
they see you, then you are always there. And you're saying, I am the person who owned this land. They may record the person as the person who the demand notice goes
my
to.
word.
Sometimes it may be put on your name for care of somebody who
So-and-so.
was 4
Who's dead.
generations before, who died, who's deceased,
Yeah.
and you'll see deceased in bracket.
Oh, boy.
Because they are interested in collecting taxes for this parcel
Parcel
of land, which
is
has
not about
a
the
tax
individual.
ID. And so people may use this and say, but you see, I'm paying tax
Yes,
for it. And you
yes.
see, I have a land paper, which is your plan. And all this time, they need to take those documents to an attorney at law
Oh,
who would
boy.
investigate the title, check for the root, check who has to sign documents if it is so, check where it was transferred if it was transferred. And do your title deed. And if no one can be found and you insist that you have proof of payment, maybe you had an
Of
old
what-
receipt, what we may probably do for you is a vesting deed where the registrar would sign a deed to convey the land to you. So we do it sometimes where a company has wound up, is defunct, and they didn't finish doing all their business and they're winding up, or individuals, so many persons have died, no one to convey for the person who sold. And then we have the new one, which is hot off the press, the declaration of possessory title, declaration of possessory title, which is when you squatted on land for over 12 years, which is
I think that is what,
very-
yes, but we promise we are going to deal with that separately.
just a teaser, just a teaser.
Oh, yes, definitely. Okay, we have a question. Dwayne, can you just provide us with a question, please? We have a question from someone on Facebook. Okay, so how do we really, I mean, you alluded to it already, but I just want it very clear. So how do you really find out exactly how someone owns? It's only through the whole searching
Yes.
system. So you can't
I
just
would-
say, well, you go in and put in an ad in the paper, like,
I
clearly
would
not.
say the surest way of ascertaining someone's title is by conducting a search at the registry.
And
Right.
a lawyer must be involved in this process.
What we do is, there are two options for persons. There is the option to go through a lawyer who will have their search clerk go through the search process, and the search clerk are very efficient. They're used to doing the searches. The cost, however, will be higher. The second alternative, and the less expensive, the inexpensive measure, is to go through the registry itself. They do have clerks at the registry who would conduct a search for you and tell you the title. Of course, if it's a complicated search, time may be of the essence for you, and you may
Yes, and
prefer
it might
to
be
get
better
a
to
private
pay.
search done.
Right.
But if you want to know if Wendy
You just
Ruffin
want to know.
has a deed, you could go and they will find that for you.
So fast people could just go and just find out whether or not I have land.
Everybody could find out whether they fast or not. And it's in your business
And it's in my business.
to know, especially if you want to purchase a piece of land.
And I'm
And if you want to, if you want to go into a lease too, because you
Yes,
do not
yes,
want
of
to
course.
lease a piece of land from somebody who has no right to lease
To
the
lease it
land,
in the
and
first
then they
place, and
have
we see
somebody in
that.
America who own land and wonder when they come back, what this person doing on my land?
there? Yeah, and that's how.
And then you start to say, but I don't know. And there's another phrase, a bona fide purchaser for value without notice. There are some things that you have with notice and without notice. If you have a
boy.
deed in the registry, the world have notice, so you can't
Yes,
say
of
you
course,
are
you can't
without
say that,
notice.
right.
And certain privileges you will get to prevent you from liability where you're probably wrong would be you have to be without notice. You have to be in good faith, bona fide.
bona fide, right?
Good faith, but you have to not notice. And if I did register in the registry and you didn't do
And you
prudent
didn't-
searches to
right,
find it,
right.
then you
Then
can't
you
say
can't
you didn't have
say.
notice, because it is for the world to see.
So it's not fastness.
It's not fasting at all. It's your business. It's your business. And it's everybody's business. We
Yes,
live on
yes.
a small island. Land is a finite resource. It's very limited. We hold it very dear. We farm it. We walk on it.
Yes,
we
yes.
we have our spring on it and we drink water. We we have our animals there. And the land is our sustains us. It's our livelihood. It's a
yes.
gift from God.
It is.
And so we have to cherish it, and we have to be prudent, and we shouldn't use land as a weapon to cause conflicts with our brothers. Best thing to do is, when you're in doubt, go to the lawyer. When you have a medical problem, you go to the doctor. So land is something that really needs legal intervention, I will say.
Okay, I have one last question for you, because I'm sure we're really close to out of time. Oh my goodness, I wish we had 2 hours. So what, in the newspaper though, there is something called, well, I hope I'm calling it right, a possessory title. What is that, and how does that come about?
Well, that is the other big topic that we mentioned. It is required, if you are applying for a piece of land, to say that you own it. You've been in possession of it for over 12 years and you've not owned it with permission of anybody else. It's required in law to publish it in the newspaper. And you must do so in 2 newspapers in 2 consecutive issues. Right?
Okay.
And you must also put it in the Gazette. So every person, whether they live in Grenada or abroad, who may have an interest, can see this notice, be apprised of it, and say whether they object to it or not. And the person themselves may not have an interest in the land or for themselves, but they may know that you don't have an interest in the land. So it may be somebody as an informant, so to speak, or maybe somebody who's saying, no, I own this piece of land. That person does not own the piece of land. That person, I rented the land to them. I left them in charge of the land. Sometimes it's an agent who's claiming it. Sometimes, people get very possessive after a while of taking care of land. 40 years they've been working on the land. They suddenly say, well, your father rented to me.
But we have to deal with that for sure.
So that's why it's a whole other topic.
My word.
And that is why you'll see that in the newspaper. And you'll see other things, for instance, forfeiture, with properties up for sale. If you haven't paid your mortgage, they have to inform the public. And different things like that. All juicy land issues.
And we are going to ensure that we keep you coming back for more. So, Naeisha, thank you so very much. I don't have to wonder if you're going to come back, because you cannot leave us on a cliffhanger like this. Thank you so much again. So you're here with us this month, and I can promise the public, I can promise you listeners and viewers, that we are going to continue with this until we wouldn't exhaust it, but until we've provided sufficient information that we believe would really be able to help you as we deal with simple things that are easily misunderstood as it relates. So, parting words.
Just so grateful that you've done this with me. It was a great opportunity for me to share some of my knowledge. I know this topic is probably going to take quite a long time. It's a whole year in law school of these classes, and land law is not most law students' favorite subject. But it is quite important, especially in a Grenadian context. We don't want to leave out our persons from Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Land is also so dear. The islands are very small, and it's so important. And you have a family history where persons are in ownership of land for generations. So it's so important to understand the complexities of it, to understand how title is derived, how you regularize your title. And just know that because land is so important to you as an individual, you need to get it right.
Yes.
Right?
Definitely.
You don't want to have a plan and be so strong that you own your land and you don't own your land, and then someone comes with a legal document, the title deed, and you have to leave your land that you've made your home. So it is so important for persons to really understand what is land all about, how do you come to own it, how you part with it, what even happens after you die, and how your estate goes on
we will be dealing with
to generations. So these are some of the important things that I think we have to really touch. And I hope I am doing justice to the topic. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Thank you again. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Until we chat again. Of course, that will be next week, Friday, God's will. Do have yourself a really safe weekend, good rest of your day. See you next week, Friday. God bless.
You are my strength. land like no other, reaches